Hi everybody, I'm Lacy Schoen. Welcome to Real Women, Real Success. This week we're going to be talking about Mean Girls. And, I wrote an article about Mean Girls. It's a humorous article that I'm going to give you a link to after I'm done talking about the more serious topic. And I hope you'll enjoy that article. It's actually on a website for a book that I'm co-authoring called Keys to Conscious Business Growth. And there's an author blog, and I posted that article this week, and I hope that you enjoy reading through it, and you probably will be able to relate to some of the circumstances that I outline in my experiences with mean girls in my life. But when we talk about mean girls, what does it mean in the workplace? It's so frustrating to be undermined by a fellow female in the workplace. I've talked about before how even though women are 50% of the population and 67% of college graduates, that we only hold 5% of Fortune 500 company leadership. We only hold 14% of government leadership. We only get 2.7% of venture capital. So we're underrepresented. We're severely underrepresented in the professional setting and in leadership. And here's my thought on that. Our skills are needed today. When you look at the male leaders that are functioning at a high level and doing great things for our governments and for our corporations, they're employing female skill sets to make them a whole leader. And, to be successful, you have to have both the male skill sets and the female skill sets. But guess what males have that we don't? They have the good old boys club. And while I know there's some negativity that sometimes comes to mind when we talk about the Good Old Boys Club, there's one really good thing about it. And that is that they support each other. They almost wholesale support each other without question. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the right way to go, but we can learn a lot as women by the club they develop, by the camaraderie they've developed to help each other succeed. And we need that. We need to be professional besties. So let's call it the Besties Club. And in our careers and in our professional lives and maybe even in our communities, you run into those women that undermine you, where they are definitely not part of the Besties Club. And what I wanted to talk about today as the more serious component of this issue to the mean girls scenario is that there's really two types of competitive women in a professional or community environment. And that is the type of woman that undermines you intentionally and the type of woman that does it unintentionally. So there's two types, and within those two categories, there's sort of some different reasoning. So there's two categories within each of the two types that I want to talk with you about just briefly today. Let's look at the woman who is intentionally undermining of other women. Most likely she's going to be insecure in some way. She may have some control issues. And there's only one of two things going on there. Either she is actively thinking about how to undermine you and stewing over it and coming up with an evil plot. And I know that sounds like it should be rare. I actually don't know how rare it is because the net result sort of looks the same. But the other type is the one who does it she knows she's doing it, but it's involuntarily. This is a person that has baggage from their past as an adult, and they haven't taken the time to purge themselves of that baggage. So the way that they make them feel better is by being competitive with other women, undermining other women so that they can elevate in what they feel is other people's eyes. Either way, whether they're intentionally thinking about it or they're just refusing to resolve their own internal issues or turning a blind eye to that, there is very little that you can do about it, except for being honest yourself. If you ever feel that tinge of competitiveness with another woman, really ask yourself why that is. If we as adults are still dealing with baggage from past relationships and childhood and our parents and all those things, it really is time to get some therapy or get some help cleaning that up, because it will stumble you and stumble you. If it doesn't stumble you in your career, it'll stumble you in your relationships. There's no healthy way to live with baggage. So I want to encourage you, if you're in need, I've done therapy before. I almost don't know anybody who hasn't. There's some point in our lives where it's valuable to have for almost everybody. So those are the two types of intentional mean girls that undermine and compete with other women. And what can you do about it? In those two scenarios, there's not a lot you can do about it directly. If you're one of those clever people that can come up with something pithy to say in a meeting when someone's just chopped you off at the knees, good for you. I am not like that. I've never been like that. I always think of the great things to say after it's all said and done. And let me give you some advice on that. If you're one of those people that thinks of the great things to say after the fact, two pieces of advice for you. If it's useful, if you might be able to use it again, if that kind of scenario crops up again, then find a productive way to say what you need to say, because sometimes when you stop people in their tracks in a very, in a way that has integrity, in a way that has respect, you do yourself the favor of stopping the behavior. If you're up to that, that's great. If you can't find a way to do it respectfully, then just don't do it, because there is another solution that I want to bring up at the end of this video. Okay, so not a lot you can do about it except a pithy response or a respectful but holding the person accountable response, if you can think of that for the next time. But then let's get to the other type of woman that undermines and competes. And that's the one that does it either unknowingly or apathetically. Now, if you're working with young people in the workplace, especially young women coming out of the millennial generation, you know, a lot of them haven't had the kind of experiences growing up that we older professionals have had with competing and really seriously difficult situations in the workplace. So there's probably some coaching that needs to go on there for the unaware. I had a situation where someone I really respect, I brought something to light for them, and they were pretty hurt and felt I was attacking their character, and I made sure that they knew this had nothing to do with character. And if someone responds to you that way, you can say this has nothing to do with character. It has to do only with behavior. And sometimes we have behaviors that we don't necessarily think about or understand. A lot of people don't evaluate themselves on a regular basis, and so you know, you can just tell them you might not be aware. This is the net impact of that behavior, and I know that's not what you want. So because I do believe in your character, because I do think you'll care, that's the reason I'm bringing it to you. And that's the person who's unaware. There are people who are just apathetic. They literally just don't care, and I have known those kind of women as well. Again, that pithy comment or that respectful comment that holds them accountable in a meeting, great if you can come up with it. Always make sure you're respectful, because if you're not, it just diminishes you as well. And maybe you can get them to care, but apathy is something that I haven't seen change a lot. Perhaps this is a person that doesn't need their job or doesn't have high aspirations, or maybe is going to lean on their spouse for an income. But for those of us that want to be better, do better, ascend, and contribute more to the world, if this person at all has anything in their nature like that, you might have an impact on them. So only you can assess that. So those are the two types of mean girls, or girls that undercut and undermine other women. And as I said, it's so important that we start developing the Besties Club, the professional Besties Club, the community Besties Club, where we support each other and we start consciously thinking about how can I support other women. Just having the thought process is very important and gets us into more of that mindset and that game that men are in when they're in their good old boys club and trying to think about how they can support each other. So let me tell you the one thing that will put a damper on any mean girl or any mean girl club, and that is if we start to build our besties community. When you can surround people with something more respectable, more professional, something that delivers a higher level of leadership, people will either fall away and disappear, or they will start to follow you. So your job one is to address the mean girl situation by developing a community of professional female besties. And that is the one thing we can all do, is to start that movement, start our own club. You know, there's a market for it. I think there's so many of us, if you're watching this video, you want something out of it. You're looking for something more in your life. And we as women, being equal part of the population and more than men of college graduates, we have the ability. The world needs our skills. So let's go out there and start building our Besties Club, and let's make irrelevant the mean girls in the workplace. So look for that link, No Mean Girls Allowed, and I'd love for you to read it. I think you'll enjoy it. Give me a comment or a question in whatever venue that you can, on Facebook, through email, or on YouTube. I love having a dialogue with you. I love that some of you have given me some ideas for videos. And until I see you next week, go out there and have a great week. Start thinking about how to build your professional Besties Club. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week.